I want to turn now and talk about the impeachment. As you likely know, Nancy Pelosi finally decided she had to move the articles of impeachment over to the Senate. She has done so with kind of great, in a celebratory, grand, showy, gleeful way. One thing she did, and I want to remind you, when Nancy Pelosi announced that they were going to begin the inquiry, just the inquiry into possible impeachment of President Trump, she tried to do this very somber, very serious, and pledged her love of America and love of the Constitution. And she's so saddened by this, and she's heartbroken and very somber. And then forced through articles of impeachment that have no validity whatsoever. And she knows it, and Nadler knows it, and Schiff knows it. The whole left knows it. But they had to find a way to get rid of President Trump. So contrast her tone, her attitude, when she says, very much regrets having to do this, blah, 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 with the way she spoke. I didn't grab the clip because I can't even stand to play her, but she was on a news show recently where she gleefully announced President Trump will be forever impeached. She's basically saying no one can take that away from her. She accomplished that. She is gleeful. She's ecstatic. She has, even though she was worried about this impeachment and she tried to stop the radical left in her party from pushing it, once she realized she had to go forward with it, she got on board, and she is leading this train gleefully, happily, trying to remove the president of the United States over nothing. I'll show you just a little. This is a tweet, actually. I have Matt the Wonderful has available, I believe, a tweet by one of the most noble members of the U.S. Congress, Mark Meadows, who gave a tweet, put a tweet out yesterday. Put the tweet up, and I'll tell you what it is. This is Mark Meadows' tweet from yesterday. He says, they claim it's a somber, serious occasion they're heartbroken over. And then they pass out impeachment signing pens with special cases. Folks, you can't make this up. And the picture in that tweet, if you look below, it's a series of pens. You know, sometimes when the president will sign an important piece of legislation, he'll sign, just a little bit with one or more pens. And so he's got the pens on hand to give out to people who are there to celebrate the occasion. And the person tweeting on Fox Reports put so many pens that Pelosi will sign to officially transmit the articles of impeachment and sign resolution appointing House managers. Why so many? They'll be given away to members like House managers as a symbol of today. Thank you. That's Mark Meadows. And I'm so grateful that he took that picture and tweeted it out, because what I want to talk about at this point in the show, it isn't really just the impeachment. Oh, the impeachment is part of it. I call this segment of the show Determined Deep State and the Chameleon Coup. And I want to just run through a variety of things that have happened since Donald Trump became president, what the left has tried to do to him, and how all of it is really just the manifestation, the carrying out of the mission that you saw inside the FBI during the time of the 2016 presidential campaign, when they were cooking up this Trump-Russia collusion hoax, trying to put enough leaks out into the media to damage President or then candidate Trump's credibility, try to cause the American people to doubt whether he was somehow under the control of Vladimir Putin, some idiotic claim like that. But this has been an effort from leftists in Washington to tell America President Trump cannot be president, candidate Trump may not be elected, trying to undermine his credibility, his legitimacy, his integrity in the eyes of the American people. And the term deep state is used a lot, and people can mean different things by it, but it's not a term to be mocked. The concept of deep state, people, you see some of the leftists on television, some of the pundits like, oh yeah, woo, deep state, everyone knows how scary they are, mocking the idea. But the concept of people embedded in high positions of power in Washington, in the State Department, in the Department of Justice, in the FBI, in other administrative agencies, in the White House, across the board in powerful positions in Washington, D.C., at some point being more committed to perpetuating the way they've always done things, perpetuating the determination to hold on to power for those who have power, perpetuating the way the ruling elite class thinks America should be run, so that, for example, in the State Department, the ruling elite think that they understand what's best for foreign policy, and they're going to do whatever they can to continue to push the foreign policy they, the ruling elite class, have arrived at, regardless of what joker the American people happen to choose for their president. This is this ruling elite mindset, this deep state that says we don't really listen to the law. We don't really listen to the American people. We don't really listen to the choices the American people made about who they want to have govern. We run this place. We will make decisions for them. So this inside the FBI during the 2016 presidential election, you had the cooking up of the Trump-Russia collusion. The entire setup, it appears more and more likely now, entirely concocted by CIA Director John Brennan. The idea that you can't have this guy, Trump, an outsider who is not yet beholden to all of the rules and all of the established powers that be in Washington, who might just come in and make decisions and policies based on the interests of the American people. And you had a John Brennan and others in Washington thrilled with the radical leftist turn this country took under President Obama, and thrilled to think that they were going to continue this path. And it isn't just towards socialism. It was towards socialism, but towards more than that, more the idea of gradually acquiring growing power in Washington, D.C., and diminishing freedom for the American people, always under the guise, under the mindset of the left, which is we actually know better than everybody else. We know what really should happen. We know what policies are right, and we're going to force that to happen. And then President Trump came along. So they worked to get rid of him during the 2016 presidential campaign. All the leaks to the media, always to undermine Trump, always to help Hillary. And they had the Wikipedia leaks, which were from accessing the DNC server, the ability to get in the DNC server and acquire the information, the emails in there was not part of the deep state effort. That was the opposition to the deep state, trying to expose the American people the Democrat Party is really all about. I'm getting at the notion that what we've been watching since 2016 is an ongoing coup. An ongoing, and I use the term chameleon because it changes form and color. It's the same mindset. It's that ruling elite. You will do what the ruling elite tell you. You will make the decisions as president, as a country that the ruling elite have dictated must be made. And you will not in any way upset the apple cart. One of the apple cart items being, of course, what happened in the Ukraine with the whole issue that arose with Burisma and came to the attention of some of the Ukrainian prosecutors, and now is the root cause of this impeachment of President Trump. So I will start with, so Nancy Pelosi gets her impeachment vote finally, and she holds on to it. She held on to it in the House, even though they had the vote, because she didn't want to transmit it to the Senate. She had all sorts of reasons. She wasn't going to transmit it to the Senate, which is where a trial, if any, will occur, because she was trying to hold on to it. In my sense, she would have held on to it all year long if she hadn't gotten pressured by so many people just to keep a cloud over President Trump's head. She gleefully announces in that news conference I mentioned, but she thought she was going to be able to arm twist the Senate and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell into doing the kind of trial she wanted to happen. The House rushed the impeachment. They were so determined to get this impeachment done, and they did that to their own detriment. There were witnesses they wanted to call, but they were not able to call because they didn't have subpoena authority. They didn't have a decision yet by a court because when the Trump administration would assert privilege over some witnesses and some information, the remedy, if you're the House and you think you're entitled to that, is not just to stomp your feet and put out ugly statements on Twitter. It is to go to court and say, we think we're entitled to hear from this witness, this witness, this witness, and we want an order. And then a court looks at it and decides whether the administration is properly asserting executive privilege. Nancy Pelosi wasn't willing to wait for that. She wanted this impeachment done. She wanted to be able to announce it. And she did it, Christmas week. I mean, it was like a few days before Christmas, with the notion is done off her desk. But she had done her damage, she believed, to President Trump as we enter into the 2020 election year. So you had Nancy Pelosi unwilling to take the time to proceed through the courts, but then she wanted to force the Senate, the Senate that is Republican majority, barely, but Republican majority. She wanted to force them to call witnesses in their trial of President Trump that she never heard from in the House, that she didn't get in the House. And that's really not the Senate's job to think up new witnesses unless they want to. They don't have to do the job for the House. So Nancy Pelosi is trying to say, I accomplished a lot by withholding these articles of impeachment. You know, she's trying to say I negotiated, I got something. She got nothing. For once, or at least for this time, Majority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell is saying we're following the same rules in the Senate for this impeachment as we did in the Clinton trial. So the basic answer is the House appoints the House managers, present the House case for impeachment. A manager is appointed by Speaker Pelosi, and then in the Senate, once the House managers are done, then the president's lawyers come and present his case. And after that, the Senate can vote on whether or not they want to call witnesses to hear anything further. This is where we are. This is what Mitch McConnell has said is going to start on Tuesday. This is and Mitch McConnell is attempting to be, at least, serious in the way in which he speaks about this. McConnell had a statement out. He talks about a few minutes ago, the Senate was notified. The House of Representatives is finally ready to proceed with their articles of impeachment. So by unanimous consent, we've just laid some of the groundwork that will structure the next several days. Basically, they're starting this Senate impeachment trial on this coming Tuesday. They've invited the House managers to come to the Senate at noon to exhibit the articles of impeachment. Later in the afternoon, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court will arrive here in the Senate, be sworn in as President pro tem by the President pro tem, Senator Grassley. Chief Justice will swear in all of the members of the Senate, the U.S. senators, because it's a trial, so they're being sworn in by the Chief Justice. The senators are to participate in this trial, McConnell added, we will pledge to rise above petty factionalism and do justice for our institutions, for our states, and for the nation, and will formally notify the White House of our pending trial and summon the president to answer the articles and send his counsel. So this is how it starts in the Senate. But I want to run through my theme for this segment is that we're just seeing a chameleon coup, or the deep state determination to take down President Trump in any way possible. And I want to run through some of the other, you may see these kind of headlines and not know all the details. I don't think anyone knows all the details, but I want to just talk about some of the things that are still evidence of this coup mentality coming from the American left. They're simply not going to permit, or they think they're going to be able to prevent, President Trump from serving as president of the United States. So let's just start with this. You may remember the Inspector General's report. We talked about in the show a great deal. Inspector General Horowitz came forward with his report about the handling inside the FBI, the handling of the accusations against President Trump related to Trump-Russia collusion and the seeking of FISA court warrants by the FBI. The Inspector General Horowitz's report was extensive, detailed, and outlined not just little things like somebody forgot to file a certain form on the right day, or someone didn't put the order of the accusations in the correct chronological order. They weren't these kind of mistakes. Inspector General Horowitz made very clear that what happened inside the FBI was a broad range of failure to follow policy, a broad range of irresponsible, dishonest, intentional wrongdoing. He spelled out things that were actually done by people inside the FBI to go to the FISA court, to seek FISA court warrants, to spy on President Trump's campaign. And he detailed all the ways in which the procedures inside the FBI intended to protect the integrity of this FISA court warrant process were completely ignored or actually even deliberately contorted by the current FBI. So he's really called out the FBI and the Inspector General's report on wrongdoing. So this is one example of what I'm saying about this deep state mentality, this ongoing chameleon coup, this deep state determination to take down President Trump. So you have the Inspector General laying all of this out. Again, he did not find procedural errors. I mean, he did find procedural errors compounded by profound, unquestionable evidence of a malicious, pernicious, evil, intentional motive to contort the procedures the FBI uses to get at the purpose, to bring about the purpose of bringing more, 4 different times, getting the FISA court to issue warrants that were unjustified. And so when you stop and think about it, this was not a review of, just procedural failure. This was the uncovering, because all of the errors he uncovered, every error he points out, Inspector General Horowitz, every mistake always served to help the government effort to destroy President Trump. None of those mistakes, none of them were in favor of the Trump campaign. I made the analogy in the show before. It's like when you're watching a football game and every ref's call that is questionable always goes in favor of the home team. At some point, you don't have to keep saying, gee, I wonder if the ref needs glasses. Gee, I wonder if he missed that. You can say that ref is biased. He's a home team guy. We have to be able in the FBI to get beyond this notion that all that happened were simple procedural errors. But when I talk about this being evidence of this ongoing chameleon coup or this deep state determination, the FBI director, Christopher Wray, gave his statement yesterday, this is the 10th, last Friday, outlined a series of proposed reforms that the FBI is going to take in response to the findings of the Inspector General's report. And Christopher Wray, himself, in my view, a deep state guy, he was someone that President Trump could get to fill the role and could bring about the decision by the Senate to confirm him as the FBI director after Comey was gone, because that's been a struggle to get people confirmed by our Senate. So this is someone that the Senate would view as palatable. So President Trump chose him, but Christopher Wray is showing every signs of the deep state mentality. One big example is this: all of the changes that he says they're going to undertake, and they had a previous announcement they were going to make 30 or something like that, 32 changes, adjustments, 40 changes in how the Bureau seeks secret surveillance warrants and handles other matters after the Inspector General's report. And then in his statement yesterday, he outlined a series of reforms that were designed to bolster public confidence. And he talked about having the Bureau be pledging to overhaul its training program for agents and lawyers to assure that information used to support future surveillance applications is complete and properly vetted. The problem was not that the Inspector General uncovered was not incomplete information. It was not failure to properly vet. The Inspector General brought to the attention of the American people that the FBI was on a deliberate mission to attack the enemy of the incumbent administration, the Obama administration. The Obama administration being in charge of the FBI during much of this, and the Christopher Wray, the head of the FBI, supposedly working for Trump, is an answer to all of this corruption, clearly designed to attack President Trump and to undermine his campaign, both before he won the election and undermine his people after they won. The answer of Christopher Wray is we'll do better training manuals. We'll do better trainings. We'll update our vetting procedures. This is a guy, he might as well have said, with a back of the hand to the American people, I'm not changing a darn thing. You can't, I'm going to put on a show and talk to you about, new procedures and new training and new vetting. Don't worry, I got it. If he can't acknowledge the intentional wrongdoing, the intentional political purpose to destroy the president exhibited in the actions of the FBI during this entire Trump-Russia collusion outrage, he's telling the American people, I don't care. I'm with them. I don't like President Trump either. I'm not going to condemn them for the real problem, which is they use their power. They weaponize their power as leaders in the FBI to attack their political enemy. If Christopher Wray would say that, I'm going to go after the people in the FBI who abuse their power to go after political enemies, who weaponize the FBI against the American people, then he would have credibility. It's a completely non-credible response. In fact, a signal to the American people, I'm not fixing one darn thing, for him to say, all I'm going to do is work on training procedures. Don't worry, we're going to have new training manuals out next week, and we're going to review our vetting procedures. This is a guy who's saying, I'm not going to fix it at all. Next example of this ongoing chameleon coup against our president. When the FISA court that granted these FISA search warrants in response to FBI applications filled with lies, contortions, distortions, all with the intent to attack the president of the United States. When the FISA court said, you know what, we need to have a thorough investigation inside the FBI. The FISA court is saying we have to look inside the FBI to understand what was necessary, what's needed for surveillance reforms. We've got to really focus on reform and the surveillance process. So we're going to appoint someone. So the FISA court decided they have to appoint someone to oversee the FBI surveillance reforms. They selected a former Obama administration lawyer, a left-wing blogger who has appeared on the Rachel Maddow show and writes extensively for the left-wing blog Lawfare, David Chris, last name K-R-I-S Chris. So the FISA court, saying they're darn serious this time and they're going to look into this and get to the bottom of the FBI surveillance reforms, appoints an Obama administration lawyer, understanding all of this happened under the Obama administration and the mindset of the Obama administration that was you get to use the power of the federal government to attack your political enemies. So the FISA court also, and there was widespread protest and opposition to this appointment. Many people in Washington said, are you kidding me? You're putting David Chris, a leftist lawyer, in charge of clearing up the leftists inside the FBI who worked very hard to destroy the president of the United States, and this is your answer to appoint him? So there were a lot of people questioning it. And I will say to this guy, I'm not going to go through them all now, but David Chris has written extensively defending much of the surveillance by the FBI, the American people. So this is the FISA court now. And I got to tell you, folks, I actually think, as I think Devin Nunes has said, I'm not sure, but I think he said the FISA court should be shut down. If he hasn't said it, Devin Nunes hasn't, others have. The FISA court should be shut down. It is rampantly and just infected with left-wingers, left-wing big government, deep state people, ruling elite class, who are probably pretty okay with the idea that you had the government hassling the Trump team, using the fight. Now, I shouldn't say pretty okay. They acted very outraged. They couldn't believe that they were so misled. But if you actually think you were misled by the leftists and the FBI under the Obama administration, and you want to correct the FBI and work on surveillance reform, why is it you would appoint as the FISA court this left-wing Obama administration lawyer? Someone could draw the conclusion you don't really mean you want that reform to happen. Next example of this ongoing chameleon coup against the president has to do with and this is, I want to say the name correctly, because we've been talking about the Inspector General, and there are many people in Washington who hold the title of Inspector Generals, many, and they're for various departments or functions. So the intelligence community, the IC, Intelligence Community Inspector General, is someone who has now been called to task or is being questioned and his conduct questioned by the Republicans. This guy, Intelligence Community Inspector General Michael Atkinson, Devin Nunes, one of the heroes on the Republican side in the U.S. House, both when we had the majority in the House in the first 2 years of the Trump administration, and then he became, in 2018, the House with the Democrats, this man, Devin Nunes, stayed in power, stayed in his office, and he's now a ranking member, which is the highest position you have when you are the minority party, ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee. And Devin Nunes has been calling out, asking questions about the way this gentleman, this Michael Atkinson, Intelligence Community Inspector General, handled the complaint by the original whistleblower, which got us all to where we are today. the alleged super secret whistleblower, who everyone knows who it was, but this super secret whistleblower, who everyone said we can, his life might be in danger if we say his name. His name's been out there all over the place. But back to this, what Nunes is saying is, when this super secret, report was filed, claiming that they thought they had seen something, this whistleblower came forward, reported this to Atkinson, who in turn turned it over and reported to his superior, whose name I don't see quickly. But in any case, the point is, there were procedures changed to allow this whistleblower to file a complaint when he wasn't an eyewitness to what he was talking about. He basically said, hey, somebody told me that somebody else said that Trump said this in a call with the Ukrainian President Zelensky in July. And this guy let that be filed as a serious, this guy, the Inspector General Atkinson, allowed that to be filed as a whistleblower complaint, forwarded it, and moved it on. Ultimately, it became the very genesis, the beginning of the attack on the president under this impeachment proceeding related to the Ukrainian phone call. And Nunes, who has a nose for truth like nobody I know, this Representative Nunes is saying we have to get to questioning, figuring out what drove this guy, this Inspector General, to take this secondhand hearsay complaint seriously, and why did forms and procedures get changed to allow people to make secondhand reports? Nunes has basically 4 points. He's saying we ought to be asking this guy. We ought to be asking this Inspector General Atkinson. Now, being in the minority, of course, the Republicans being a minority in the House, they really can't do a thing about it. The Democrats just obviously can't be bothered, don't want the questions asked. They're thrilled that they got this mindless secondhand hearsay whistleblower complaint blown up into an impeachment of the president. They don't want anyone asking questions about why this whole thing got started. But again, my theme here on this ongoing coup, this chameleon coup, this is another piece of it. This deep state determination to get Trump. This guy, it appears, Atkinson, saw the opportunity to undermine Trump, to get something started against him, to stir the works up against him. And as you likely know, this super secret whistleblower went to all sorts of places, apparently met with the Democrat staff of Adam Schiff prior to even writing the whistleblower complaint, may have had their help in editing it, had many contacts with the Democrats in the House. This is not a guy who was the kind of whistleblower the statute anticipated, which is someone coming forward out of honest concern, laying out what they saw or heard and saying, I don't know if this is a problem, but it didn't seem right to me, so here I am asking. That's what a whistleblower thing is supposed to be. So I want to hit that story with him. And then the last one is there are all sorts of questions about the FISA court review, the order of looking at people in the FBI, the Horowitz report, leaving out, literally leaving out many, many people who were implicated in the Horowitz report. But somehow the FISA thing court, when they asked for an investigation to be made, aren't identifying numerous clearly complicit members of the FBI leadership, names left out. No, don't bother. Don't have to look into them. I'm getting to the point. I'll wrap up this very lengthy segment, but I think this is such an important thing to understand. You're going to hear in the Senate trial, the Senate impeachment trial starting next Tuesday. You're going to see headlines in all the major networks and all the big ABC, NBC, CBS type networks. You're going to see headlines. You're going to see leaks. You're going to see revelations and shocking revelations and stunning reports. It's all the same hogwash. It's the left determined to prevent a president who is actually committed to fulfilling the America First agenda, to draining the swamp in Washington, to holding accountable people who are such as Burisma and the entire left-wing involvement in Burisma and the Hunter Bidens of the world. You're going to hear the left squawking, and the leftist media squawking about latest revelations and intrigue and stunning reports, and it's all just the left continuing to agitate this ongoing coup, ongoing attempt to undermine the president of the United States. That's what it is.